beautiful people. I am so glad you guys are here. Hang out 1 minute while we get Instagram connected. I am so excited to share with you who I have in the house here. We're almost live there. Hang tight. And let's see. Yes, I think we're live everywhere. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the channel. We have Nate in the house, Raw Natty N8, and I just want to say,
whoa, dang! Look at those lights. You guys are on it.
It's the last day of the bundle, so don't delay. Come on and hang out with Nat and I and play.
Yeah. All right. Cheers to that. I'm loving it, man. That is awesome.
And I literally just made that up.
You're on the fly. That is awesome.
Oh, so Nate, thank you for joining me. And please take a minute and tell us a little bit about you. I know this is the last day of the bundle. If you haven't gotten the bundle yet, you've got to get the bundle. It's so amazing, $49. And you can click on my link, or you can click on Nate's link, which is found in where's your link found? And tell us about you, and I'll just listen for a minute.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for having me on. And, it's kind of funny because I was originally wanting to interview you, but it seems like we got a little, like switch the script. Now you're interviewing me, but of course we can interview each other. So yeah, my name's Nate, and my name on Insta or, Facebook, YouTube, all these different ones is Raw Natty N8. And I used to be a glass blower, and I used to sign my name with an N and a number 8. So when you sound it out, remember how we learned in Sesame Street, sound it out, right? So it's Nate. Some people say N8 because, they don't really catch on. But no, this is great. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, definitely grab the bundle from Jennifer's link. My bundle link is in my Instagram bio, which as soon as you go to my page, it's just right there on the page. Yeah. And Facebook, of course, I've got the link in the Facebook posts and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a great opportunity to grab a massive amount of just really great material to help people. And these bundles are amazing. It's like over $5,500 for $49. Like, you can't beat that deal,
Yeah, and how you find out, the value is that if you had purchased each one of these separately, that's how much it would cost. And oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. So you can get the same thing, but only until the end of today. And so I wouldn't wait any longer. If you haven't gotten it, go ahead and grab it. And the clickable link will be in the show notes after we go live. But you can copy paste the one below. And of course, Nate told you where to find it on his channel. And yes, we can talk to each other and ask each other questions. It doesn't have to be one-sided. So I just want to check the chat and say hello. Bernadette is in the house. Hello. And Lisa's in the house. Good to have you. I see we have some other people watching. Ashes to Ashes. Hello, beautiful, healthy, amazing people. I'm so grateful to have everybody here with us today. And if you have any questions for Nate or for myself at all during our time together, please go ahead and put it in the chat, and we will be happy to, chat with you or answer questions. So
I love it.
Yeah, so you guys, you and Lissa have a lot in the bundle, but I know you specifically did a smoothie, book, which is like super cool. The Smoothie Solution, right?
That's right. Yeah, the Smoothie Solution. Yeah, it kind of morphed into this bigger project than I originally had intended to start off with. I was like, oh, I'll just put some smoothie recipes together because I have friends who don't know how to make a smoothie. And it's like interesting because, being on a vegan diet since 2011 and a whole food plant-based diet since around, I guess it was maybe like 2014 is when I really started to, get away from more processed foods, and on a raw diet since 2017. I just think like everybody knows how to make a smoothie. And there's a lot of people that just don't really know how to make a smoothie. So that's what I put this book together for is, just recipes for people who are kind of new to smoothie making. And I tried to craft these recipes to where they were like really well-rounded as far as the nutrition that goes into it. Sometimes, we can get a little lazy in making smoothies. And that's what's fun with smoothies. You could just throw in some bananas and some fruit and, maybe some fresh pressed juice or coconut water or something. Boom, you're good to go. But a lot of the smoothies I did create have chia seeds or flax seeds, ground flax seeds, and some different seasonings like turmeric and spirulina and chlorella and these sorts of things. But what's fun is after you start to kind of make, really any recipe, you can kind of uh, create your own recipe once you get the fundamentals down of how to make the smoothie, right? So, but there was a lot of other questions I feel that people come up with, like, what about glyphosates? Aren't you scared about glyphosates? Or what about the lectins and oxalates in spinach and these sorts of things? So I started to kind of add more and more to this book, and it just kind of grew into this huge thing. And I mean, I could have easily put together like a 600-page book, but I had to really kind of keep it. I created it in Canva, so you can only have, I think they upped it. It's like 350 pages you can put in Canva now, which is awesome. But yeah, a lot of information in the book, about mindful eating and hydration and emotional eating and these sorts of things. So there's a lot of information in there. It's more than just recipes. And I do have some milk recipes in there, and I've also got a sprout guide on how to get sprouting, because sprouts are amazing, and you could blend sprouts in your smoothie and not even know they're there, but you're getting all those vitamins and minerals. So yeah, that was kind of the inspiration behind the book. And of course I did create the book for this bundle specifically, because the bundles that we're involved in, with the vegan health bundle and the raw bundle, we like to have everything brand new. So if somebody got the bundle previously, last one or whatever, they can rest assured that this bundle here is completely new content coming from us. Certain creators might have their products in another bundle, but this bundle, the vegan health bundle, is always all brand new, exclusive for this vegan health bundle. So that's what's so awesome. And I was drawn to your book by the title, Give Plants a Chance. I thought that was a pretty cute name. And I was like, who is this Jennifer Diamond? And, that's so cool because, you see so many other people who are on a mission to really kind of help try to encourage people and inspire people to just eat more plants. You don't have to be vegan. You don't have to be raw, to eat more fruits and vegetables. Like grandma knew what was up, right? She's like, eat your fruits and vegetables. We need to listen to grandma, So yeah, that's one thing that's really cool about this bundle is seeing so many other creators and what they've put in. And yeah, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be a part of something like this.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much for sharing so much about your Smoothie Solution book. I made the pomegranate green boost smoothie that you have here. And these are just a few of the ingredients. You mentioned flaxseed. And so I do have flaxseed here, and it's really, really good. And I'm excited to try more of the smoothies that you have in your book. And yes, some of these books, including yours, are like over 300 pages of just information and recipes, and like you said, information on hydration and glyphosate. I saw so much stuff, and even if you've touched on it or about it, it's a great reminder. And also, usually you will come across something. I do when I read. I'm like, okay, I knew about this, but I didn't know about that, and that's always fun. I also love that in this particular one, you use hemp milk. And I recently saw you make hemp milk, and I never did that until now. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I make almond milk, I make soy milk, I made oat milk, never thought to make hemp milk. So there's always things that we can learn. And this book is like super packed with information.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you got to make the hemp milk. I know it's so fun when you learn new things, and we're all learning from each other, and we learn new things. We're maybe, new informations, new studies are coming up and out, especially within the last like 15 years. There's a lot of really amazing studies coming out about the gut microbiome, and it's neat to see that. And it's neat to be able to be empowered to make your own things like these nut milks, because when you can buy nut milks in the store, like cashew milk is amazing, cashew chocolate milk is amazing. I used to love getting the chocolate milk, the Dutch style chocolate milk from the store. And it's so cool when you can learn how to make your own stuff. Yeah, and as you saw with the hemp milk, like how easy, right? Just some hemp seeds, some water, blend it. You don't even have to strain it if you don't want to. It's just extra fiber, right, in the smoothie or the drink or whatever you're using the milk for. But I love that learning how to make different milks. We don't make a lot of milk. We don't keep it stocked or anything. But if we do want some milk for something, boom, like, doing some overnight chia pudding, or we do like overnight oats when we go hiking and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's fun. And of course, each one has its different kind of flavor profile. So cheers to you for making the hemp milk. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And I know, like, I like that you don't have to strain it, but you can if you want to. And with like things like almond milk that I've done before, oat milk, I really want to strain that, because there, the meat of it is in there.
Yeah.
The almond, right, meat. And so, but it's great because you don't have to waste that. You can save that. You can dehydrate it, which I've done before. And then I give it a little blend. And then I have almond flour if I want to make something else. And, with being raw, with things like that, like almond pulp, do you do anything with it that you could share? Or are there any
Yeah.
suggestions in the book, or maybe even not in the book?
I didn't put that in the book. And of course, like after are done with the book, I'm like, oh man, I should have put that in there. Oh, I could have said this, like, so, but that is definitely something that I kind of wish I would have put in there, like a whole page about how to use the pulp, because yeah, like why throw the pulp out? We're paying, top dollar for these, unpasteurized almonds if you go with unpasteurized almonds. And of course, another thing too, like, making a nut milk of some sort, like cashew, almond, oats isn't necessarily like, some people might make like a walnut milk. Of course, it's best to not necessarily walnuts are roasted, but a lot of times, cashews are roasted and almonds are roasted. So of course, it's going to be best practice to use a raw almond or cashew. And of course, if you soak the almond, you can just kind of squeeze and the almond comes right out of the skin. Somebody was saying to use 2 towels, like put them all in between a towel and just rub them. I'm going to try that because that would really speed the process up of having to deshell the almond. You don't have to deshell the almond because if you soak it, of course, it's going to be, minimizing the whatever it is in the almond skin that we need to be fearful of, because it's like there's fear every corner, even our water's
Right.
bad and all this stuff, right? So but it's interesting. Yeah, with the pulp though, you don't want to throw it out. It is good to save it. And like what I like to do is we make raw brownies or like power bars with dates and different nuts and seeds. And you can throw the almond pulp or the cashew pulp in there, or the oat pulp in there. But it is good to dry it first because the moisture from the blend is going to alter the the shelf life of the Pro Bar. If you make with like wet pulp. But another great thing to make is crackers. If you make crackers or, putting it into kind of like a bread. I'm actually working on a new book right now. It's called Sprouted Breads and Spreads. And so I'm going to be putting in some different cracker recipes and different bread recipes and dips and different fun things to have for, parties and whatnot. But that's a good thing to do with the pulp. Make crackers or, dry it out if you have a dehydrator, or you could leave it on like a paper plate or something like that and just keep it on your counter and maybe put it in some sunshine from the window. It'll dry out. And then you could use that for all kinds of things. I mean, people are like, we're brilliant as people. We could figure out something to put the almond flour in. And of course, if you don't mind the pulp, it's just extra fiber. You can blend it into a smoothie, or you could use it for like a soup base. Heck, you could sprinkle it on your potatoes if you do potatoes or something like that. Like it's just, you could get creative with it. And of course, we really try to not waste, as much as we can. Like, we, of course we're composting and these sorts of things, but, if we can utilize these sorts of things, like the pulp, it's great rather than just tossing it.
Yeah, that's all great. I don't know if you guys can see, but Remy's in the house. Hey, Remy. He's in the
Hey,
corner down
Remy.
there. Remy, you want a
Uh,
treat, huh? I think he wants
he's
a
like,
treat. I'm gonna have to
yeah,
have
where's my
Daddy.
treat?
Yeah, daddy's gonna have to get him a cookie. You want a cookie? He's like, no,
Oh, love it.
I want to be on the show.
How
So
how
maybe
how
you
old's
can get him
Remy?
a cookie. He is 13 and a half years young.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
okay, all right.
I can, yeah, here, let me see if he'll let me. Come here. Come here, you wanna say hello?
Hey,
Hello,
Remy.
hello, beautiful
What's
people.
up, boy?
Yeah, it's so good.
Aw,
All right, but
you little fluff ball.
I'm gonna be drinking this, so I'm not gonna wash my
Good.
hands. But if I was going to be sharing with you after holding the dog, I would wash my hands. Yeah. So there is a couple things. There's a question here from Lisa. I also want to say hi to Lisa and hi to Anne is in the house and Marilyn is in the house. I'm so glad you guys are here. But she asked, does hemp milk have much of a flavor?
That's a great question. And yeah, it definitely has a flavor of its own. Like cashew milk is way more mild, right? Creamy, and you're and not like super nutty. Hemp milk definitely has more of like a nutty kind of earthy taste, but it's delicious. And of course, if you're making your own milk, you could throw in a date or maybe a splash of maple syrup and maybe just a tiny bit of vanilla extract or vanilla bean powder or something like that to kind of sweeten it up a little bit. You could throw some cinnamon in there. Heck, you could throw some cayenne pepper in there. That's what's fun with making your own stuff is you can add different flavors to things. But the hemp milk by itself does have a distinguishable taste, but it's not I wouldn't say it's like a bad taste at all. It's an acquired taste though. Some people might taste it if you're drinking it just by itself. You could be like, that's pretty strong taste, because it's kind of an earthy kind of, not it's not a nut, but it's almost kind of like a nutty kind of flavor. Definitely different than almond or oat. Those are much more mild, and of course cashew is delicious. But what I like about the hemp milk is it is higher in omega-3s, and it is the fat profile is a little different than say something like a cashew, and it's fairly inexpensive. Yeah, and you don't have to soak the nuts like you do
Right.
with almonds or cashews, so it's quick. Like if you need some milk right now, you can easily blend up some hemp milk. But yeah,
Yeah,
it does have a different taste.
I thought it was kind of a nutty, sort of a nutty, a unique nutty flavor. That's what I
Mhm.
thought. I like the idea of you sharing, all the different things that you could do to change the flavor, the taste, depending on
Mm.
what you're going to use it for. And, a question that I have for you. So I just want to make sure if you're new here, like, you know, Nate is doing everything raw. He's a raw vegan. And so all of this is considered raw. So when he talks about soup, which he mentioned earlier, that's not a cooked on the stove soup. That might be heated up at a temperature, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at 115 or less, like in the dehydrator, for example. Um, but when you talk about nuts, so cashew nuts, you mentioned as an example, you said you want to make sure that it's raw. So what makes it raw versus if someone didn't know, like what could you tell someone about the difference between like a dry roast or a salted and a raw, and why would you as a raw vegan choose that one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, of course, I love a roasted salted nut, I mean, they're really delicious. And, with the salt, you just kind of want to keep eating them. Raw, unroasted nuts, like you have a couple and you're like, maybe I'm good. They're not as enticing to eat, especially these ones like almonds with the wasabi and all kinds of different flavors they have on them. But the concept really, from what I gather, because, I'm no pro, like I don't know all the stuff that there is to know, but it's interesting how we can kind of hear information and we can, it clicks and you can adhere to the information. And the information that I've gathered is that when you soak the nut, when it's, or let's say it's a raw nut, and you soak it, that's going to be the best way to consume it. It's going to kind of inhibit the or lessen the enzyme inhibitors, they're called, right? So it's easier to digest the nut when it is kind of in a sprouted state. So that's really the difference, is something that hasn't been roasted. It's more closer to its natural state. um and that's the concept of raw, is eating as much as we can as a raw foodie, to eat as much as you can in its living or more natural state. When we roast things, we bring things to a certain temperature, it changes the molecular structure of the molecules within whatever it is that we're cooking or heating. It's not that that's necessarily like, horrible, but it's just from my lens, the lens that I see the world through now and the information that I've taken in, it's not optimum. And, I'm at a point in life where I would like to do whatever I can in my power to ingest things, in its most optimum level that's going to be better for my body. And so through my lens, that's where raw comes in. It makes sense. The concept of, like, say you take an apple and you bake an apple in the oven. Now, a baked apple is delicious, especially if you throw a little caramel sauce on there, some cinnamon. Oh my gosh, it's like an apple pie, right? So delicious. But if you were to take those seeds from the apple after it's been baked and try to plant those seeds in the ground and grow an apple tree, it wouldn't grow. It like killed the life force of the
Ooh.
seed within the apple, right? So that's the concept of roasting. And if, how Nikola Tesla said, if we want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So if everything is energy, everything is frequency, like everything that we're seeing right now, we're seeing each other, these microphones and all this stuff is vibrating energy. Energy is in everything. It's a vibrating, atom. So what kind of energy are we putting into our body, especially 3, 4, 5 times a day? And if it's, it's interesting. Like, is it a high vibrating energy, or is it a low vibrating energy, or is it like dead? And essentially, like, that's kind of how I picture to be cooked food is it's kind of dead in a way.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to scare people and that kind of stuff, but there are cooked food toxins. So depending on how your food is cooked, if you're broiling food or barbecuing food and you get that nice, delicious black crust, sometimes we like these sorts of things, but that's carcinogenic. That's actually a toxin, and that can, affect us in ways where our skin ages, maybe not as gracefully and these sorts of things. So, the best way to, say, cook food, in my view, would be to steam it. You're not bringing something, to such an extreme temperature to where you're actually changing the structure of the food as much as if you were to be like frying it up in a pan with oil, like a stir fry.
Yeah.
Of course,
I
like
love
stir fries are amazing.
Yeah, I love the analogy that you just shared. I love what you just taught about the seeds in the apple, right? And when you cook it or bake it, it might be delicious to eat, but you're right. I never thought about that. Then those seeds can't be planted. So that whole thing about, thinking of food in that way, especially if you're eating for longevity or healing purposes, or just to be your healthiest self, it makes a lot of sense to think about things a little bit differently, right? Because apples are great. They're whole food, they're a plant, they grow on a tree, they're in their whole form. But then when we bring the temperature up, like you said, and if those seeds are in there, then no, that wouldn't be the seed of choice for me to go plant in the garden. So really, really
Right.
cool.
Yeah, it wouldn't it wouldn't
It wouldn't
grow,
grow.
but if you take a whole apple, like from nature, how we are, so, in nature, the concept is amazing. Like, just the symbiosis of us as these, more, frugivorous, kind of species, like, a more natural food. Like, if we picture, just you're in the tropics, this is kind of the vibe that, people promote with raw food. You're in the tropics, you're eating all these delicious fruits that are growing from the trees, and these are what the tree is giving to us as a gift. Here, have this. And we're one of the only species that sees in the red spectrum. So we have the thumb, right? And we can climb trees and we can see, like, ooh, that's the ripe mango I want. We climb the tree, get the mango. And of course, you're not eating the mango seed, but like, say, with apples, it's fascinating to picture, like, we eat the apple, we swallow the seed. Now, I know there's, like, bits of, I think it's arsenic in the seed. Some people,
Yes.
like, don't eat the apple seed. I've eaten lots of apple seeds in my life, and, like, maybe by accident you eat a couple seeds, it's not going to, kill you, or, a
Right.
couple apple seeds or whatever. But then you go and eliminate that seed, right? Like, next morning, and you're outside in nature, maybe, like you bury your elimination and going to grow an apple tree and give you even more apples, and tree is going to clean the air. It's so fascinating to picture that like connection, that symbiosis between the fruits. Like say like melons, you eat the melons, the seeds, and you eliminate those seeds, it's going to, behind you it's growing more melons, cleaning the soil, cleaning the air, as opposed to say, having the other lens on that I used to wear, which I used to hunt and I used to fish, and you can't like cut a fish heads off, and stick it in the ground and it's gonna, grow more fish, or a lamb's leg, like a chunk
Yeah.
of bamboo. You cut a chunk of bamboo, stuff it in the ground, that bamboo is going to grow into more bamboo. You can't do that with an animal's leg or whatever, right? So it's so fascinating, the
Wow.
lens,
Yes, I love that. I love that. This is like so exciting to hear. And it's like, gosh, how did we get so disconnected? I mean,
Right.
it's so
Yeah.
disconnected from the thought of, eating something, eliminating it, and it growing something that can produce and allow us to live longer,
Right.
right? And fuel us.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like you picture with like say like watermelon, for an example. How many more watermelons is it going to grow? It's going to grow so many watermelons. Or an apple tree. Like an apple tree produces so many apples, right? So it's so fascinating when you picture the connection that we have. And of course, there's all kinds of different stories, and I love stories, and I go deep down different rabbit holes, Um, but some of these stories are fascinating. Like there's the story of Noah in the Bible, right? And there was the great flood, and we didn't have the vegetation to go pick the fruits and these sorts of things, so maybe we had to resort to killing and cooking animals.
Mm.
And then of course, maybe we figured out like, hey, this is a good thing, we could domesticate these animals and we could use these as trade, as currency. And so I mean, we could go deep and way out there with different topics, but it's so fascinating to picture like how much money is being made on exploiting these animals and creating these animals for food. And it makes sense because we're like, hey, we got to feed the planet. But then when you think about how many apples one tree produces, or tomatoes, how like people grow gardens, and the harvest comes, people are like, take some zucchini, take some tomatoes, we have so many. I
Yeah.
mean, gardens
Yeah.
gardens and plants grow so much.
I just want to show
So
you,
yeah, it's
okay, just to your point,
yeah.
this these
Oh, I
these are
love it.
this is
You got
tomato
some.
right here. This was my
I
girlfriend's
love it.
extras that she had to get rid of so that her plant will grow better.
Boom.
And so I got these extra
Yes.
ones and I just rooted them. And now I'm going to grow them. And I was able to also
Yeah.
share with some family. And so, to your point, I mean, she could have just cut them and thrown them out, but no. And you can't do that with an animal
Yeah.
leg or something. So I just thought, oh my gosh, I want to show you this because we're talking about
That's
it.
so cool.
So yeah,
That is so cool.
yeah,
It's so fascinating too, like there's so many different concepts and theories and stories out there in the world. And we as humans love stories. That's what books are, and movies and these sorts of things. And it's really, really interesting how these plants, they heal us. Like we see it because we as humans were like, show us the data, like we want to see the like what are the double blind placebo studies and all these sorts of things. We want to see it. And what we see, I was in nursing for years, and I worked in the cardiac unit and the ICU, and I worked with
oh
Alzheimer's
wow,
patients and people who are, I worked in the pulmonary clinic and the endocrinology clinic, and I got to see a lot of stuff that happens to our body when we're not eating and drinking, water. We're not eating the right foods, and we're not sleeping. We're stressed out, and we're taking all kinds of medications. And it was like, wow, I'd like to picture that the body is really intelligent. Like you cut your thumb, you don't have to do
right,
nothing. That your thumb's going to heal itself. What can we do to support this healing? So, and when we see about the plants, and of course, not to say that I don't miss meat. I really miss cooking up a tri-tip for friends, and like having some smoked salmon and these sorts of things. Like it's not that I don't like the taste or the texture of animal flesh, but it's not necessarily the most beneficial for me to live this vibrant life that I would like to live. It's something that I have control over. And there, in this world as a human on this plane of existence, there's not a lot of things that we have control over, right? Taxes,
Right.
these sorts of things, right? But we do have control over what we're feeding ourselves every day. And of course, we can really dig in deep and get real freaked out thinking about, well, who's growing these crops and what are they spraying on the crops and all this kind of stuff for sure. But we can just do the best that we can do. And a conventional cucumber is going to be better than, of course, I know whatever camp, people prescribe to, whether it be carnivore or the other extreme, like, natural hygiene, raw vegan. Everybody agrees on processed food is just
Yep.
junk. Like that's just a way for companies to be able to, sell their product. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant marketing scheme. They put in the super additives, like it's these guys are amazing. They're geniuses at putting the stuff in the Doritos, right? And there's that Dorito experiment way back when, and they put the stuff in the food and it makes you where you can't like not eat it. It's so dang delicious. But of course, and then, the revolving door with the pharmaceutical company, there's the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration that administers the drugs in the food. It's like, wow. And then working in the medical field, I just was like, what can I do to just not be a part of any of this? I would like to just, take as much control back as I can and do the best that I can. And that's where raw just made the most sense, and I feel great. I've been raw for, since 2017. I do have some steamed broccoli and carrots and beets. I like to even have cooked lentils, and, I really missed rice for years and years. I didn't have rice. And I'm like, why am I trying to hold myself in this box? Like who am I trying to impress being a raw foodie or whatever? Like, I don't really feel rice is necessarily that terrible. There's people with different lenses on, like it's mucus forming, it's acid forming, and, cancer thrives on acid and all this stuff. I just want to live a good, healthy life, and some rice and lentils is not necessarily like the devil. It's a lot better than like cheeseburgers and fries or whatever.
I am so
right?
glad that you shared about, that you're a real person. Like we're real people. Yes, we're trying to share with people about living a plant-based life, whether it's raw or whole food and it's a little cooked or whatever. But the fact that you said that, grilling up a piece of meat or something, you remember the taste or you remember what it was, but better that it doesn't resonate with what, you're doing now. People need to know it's not that we're like, oh, that never happened, or, we don't ever think about that, because I think that just showing people that we're real. I mean, I can say that I remember, oh, I really enjoyed, this type of, animal product at one point, and I know what it tastes like. But then now I have education about not only what it does to my body, but also, what it does to the animals. But I appreciate that you brought that up to share. And it's interesting. So you talked a little bit about your background. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about when you made the transition? Was it because of the nursing or the different medical, experiences that you had? Or when, was there a health issue? Like, why did you decide, okay, raw is the right way for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so, and just to kind of reiterate on what you were saying about the animal products, like just to, rewind just a moment there, I do feel personally that there's a lot of people who hunt, and it's a really special time. Like once a year they get together with their grandfather and their dad, and their uncle, and the kids are out there, and it's like there's a lot of, kinship and good energy and good vibes in a lot of ways, as far as that connection, that tribal primal state that I really do miss, and I can really appreciate from someone who is, going out to like hunt to get meat to feed their family through the winter time. And I do feel that wild game is going to be much better of a meat source than, conventionally grown meats. And, someone who is eating high amounts of vegetables, like their plant whatever. There's like, there's all these labels, plant centered, plant whatever. I'm trying to think of the name where it's like not plant exclusive, but maybe they're like, plant centered, where they eat a lot of plants, but they still incorporate some animal products, but very minimal. And it's wild game. Of course, there's the whole free range chicken concept and all these sorts of things. I do truly feel that someone could live a really vibrant and healthy life, still incorporating some of these kinds of foods into their life. Now, that's coming from a non-vegan lens, because veganism has nothing to do with diet. It's an ethical stance. It's a moral, like, projection of how we feel. Like, there's no such thing as a vegan diet necessarily, because veganism has nothing to do with diet. But it's a great way to describe that you don't eat any animal products. But I do truly feel that someone can eat very small amounts, like, because back in the day we used to eat just tiny little bits of meat. We didn't have meat to feed people the way that we are nowadays, because we're growing how we grow, right? Exploiting these animals. So, but that's from a non-vegan lens. And, so for my friends that are, heavy into meat and, hunters, eating more vegetables and kind of crowding out the animal products from their plate with more vegetables and fruits is going to be better than, right, eating highly processed stuff. Of course, let's get processed stuff completely off the table. But I do truly feel that, like, inside, I do truly feel that someone could be very healthy, because I've met people on the ski slopes who are in their 80s who aren't vegan and aren't plant-based. And it's like, wow, they're still up here skiing and they're in their 80s, so there's something to be said. And of course, genetics and all these sorts of things play in, exercise and sleep and hydration and all these sorts of things. But, coming from the side that I came from, that world, right. Cause as a, especially, I mean, I would say in a lot of countries it's this way too, but, as a man, you got to kill your meat, you got to protect your family. And I caught a fish when I was 7 years old in the river, Rogue River. And I was like ecstatic about this fish. So down there with my uncle, my dad, and my grandpa. And my grandpa took the hook out of the fish's mouth and it was bleeding. And I felt like I was heartbroken that the fish was bleeding. Like, oh my gosh, you hurt the fish, and it was really exciting, like my family's all excited to like have me reel this fish in. And it was just, adrenaline rush. And fishing is, some of my most amazing mornings were being out there in the morning, frost on the line and all these sorts of things. And it's a good skill to have as a human on the planet to be able to, catch your food. But I wanted to just play with that fish. I was just like trying to touch it in the bucket of water. And my grandpa was like, all right, called off the fish, we're on the dock, on the river. And he's like, let's go clean the fish, and I'm like, clean the fish? Like, what are we going to do? Give it a bath? Like, it's in water. How are we going to clean this fish? And so we went up to the kitchen, and then he stuck the knife in the anus of the fish and gutted it up slid it right up to the neck of the fish and started pulling out the guts. And I lost it. Like, I literally, like, I screamed and like ran to the bathroom, and I was like crying, and I like literally was punching myself in the head, so mad at myself for killing this fish. And I'm 7 years old. Wow. And I would have been vegan right then because I did not want to hurt that fish. It was like my heart was broken that I killed this fish. But then the rest of the night, I went out to the wood shop with the men, and it was like indoctrination time. This is what men do. Circle of life, survival of the fittest, provide for your own, the whole thing. And that night they had wired in a switch within me. And I feel like we all have this switch, trauma and these sorts of things. And I had to shut that. I had to turn that switch off. I had to turn those feelings off, because this isn't what men do. And this is a part of life. Right. And so it's really fascinating because I wanted to make them proud. I'm this young man, young boy, you don't want to make your older men, the mentors in your life, like look down upon you. It's so fascinating, the psychological aspects of us as a human growing. So that was the first thing that was always with me. And, of course, like, I would catch a fish and I would say the prayer. And I love Native American
Mm.
history and the concept of and how they lived, like no trace. And they really, they believed that the spirit, like resided within everything, within the water and the trees and the air, and like, giving thanks to the elk that you just killed. And the elk is, you're going to take the elk's power within you and you're going to feed your family. It's beautiful, these concepts. And this is what we can kind of cling to, especially as men. Um, but I just, that was the first seed that was planted. And then later in life, I mean, like, neither one of my parents were cooks. They weren't chefs. Like, we ate a lot of processed food. And, of course, like one of my favorite meals were BLTs, toasted white bread with some mayonnaise, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. That was a
Oh, wow.
good night's, maybe with avocado too. I loved those BLTs, man. Those were some of them. Like, even my parents' energy was different on those nights of BLTs. Um, so yeah, growing up, seeing family members with, different diseases and watching, different,
Mm.
seeing like people talking about their medication, dosages and, how they're like, well, you're going to find out one day, Nate, this is going to happen. You're not going to be living, the concept that we're all going to get something and everything. It's just a part of life, and, heart disease runs in so many people's families. My grandpa had cancer. My grandma died from cancer. Both my grandma and grandpa on either side, my mom and my dad's side, died of cancer. There's like, certain family members have diabetes, and of course they're like extremely overweight. They're addicted to fat, and of course, like these foods are addictive. So all of these things are kind of adding up into some sort of storage bank within my mind. And then, of course, going into the medical field, yeah, seeing firsthand, people of ages, in their 50s up to, if they're lucky enough in their 80s, just different, like, just daily acts of living were hard. And I don't want that. I'm like, man, I don't want that, but I'm going to have that. I started to really kind of like reflect, like,
Mm.
I'm going to be like these people if I don't do something different than what they're doing, because I don't want to do what they're doing because I'm seeing what's happening to this individual. What can I do that's going to be better for me? And it came across some documentaries. I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. That really
Yeah.
kind of like spawned something within me. I was really sick. I was sick for 2 weeks, horrible flu within the winter season. I had asthma growing up. I had allergies, growing up. Always have, some sort of hay fever or flu at least a few times a year. Always the change of seasons, right? You just feel down. And, looking back, it's like, oh yeah, like you weren't drinking enough water. You're eating crap food, like highly processed dead food as like your main source of fuel. Probably not like, there's just very nutrient deficient diet. And then, my mom plays a pretty big role in my story. She had kidney cancer. She's a cardiac nurse, and she was
Mm.
retired at the time. She got kidney cancer and she had that kidney removed. And that was a horrible experience for her because they didn't take it all and they had to go back in. And it was just like horrible for her. Anyways,
Mhm.
she didn't change her diet or lifestyle, mindset, any of this kind of stuff. Cancer comes in the other kidney. And it was like, and I'd heard of Gerson. So I was like, hey, let's send you to Gerson, and like, these people have like a really great facility and they've had really good luck, like helping people reverse their cancer, turn this around. Let's see if we can do this more naturally, because she, as well as, myself too, like when you lose both your kidneys, the kidneys are the filter, the blood filtration organ of our body. And, mind you, we have like 7, filtering organs within our body, the skin also being like a filtering organ. It's, you don't want to lose your kidneys because then you're on what's called dialysis for the rest of your life. You go and sit in a chair, they take your blood out, throw it through a machine, it filters your blood, they put it back in. It's like a life sentence. So
Yeah.
she went to Gerson, followed that protocol for a very long time. She changed her mindset. She was like, I'm already healed. I'm already healed. I just have to do the work. And I was like, ooh, that's a good mindset, Mom. You're going to heal yourself. I know you are. I can feel it. Like, I can feel that you have made this connection now that you're changing up your ways. And, she was heartbroken that she started to really like uncover a lot of, sort of the propaganda and lies that we're told especially, in the medical field, like it's so fascinating how many people have no clue about nutrition. That's not necessarily a thing because, a hospital is a business. They want to keep those beds full, just like the hotel. If you have empty beds, you're not making any money, So in the pharmaceutical companies, there's all kinds of rabbit holes we can jump down there too. But it's interesting how it all works together, right? Like the food keeps us sick, keeps us coming back, keeps us on these medications, it's fascinating. And so she started to put on a different lens, and I started to really dive deep into this arena too. I was like learning about juicing and learning about raw foods, and really started to I was open to the information. I was ready for this information because how like when we're not ready, there's you got those blinders on. If anything is coming in that doesn't go with your own narrative, you're not letting that information in. But I was ready. I was ready for this information, so I was taking this information. And it just made sense to me. I was like, dang, man, like raw foods make sense. Like you don't, you eat the grapes. Like, we're all naked in the, forest or the jungle. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to follow the primates, yeah, you're eating. Yeah, exactly. You're climbing trees, picking dates and coconuts. And, maybe you're eating some greens, remineralizing your teeth, these sorts of things. But we'd be eating the fruits. We'd be eating from the trees, the bushes, and the vines naturally, and that's really what helped me. And I was like, I'm going to do what you're doing because you're going to reverse this. And it took over 2 years, but she reversed her kidney cancer, and it was stage 4 kidney cancer. And her protocol was intense. It was not a lifestyle that I wanted to live because she was pulling at strings trying to save her life. Right. Yeah. And here I am like this, coming up on my middle age man, pretty healthy, of course, like not the healthiest I could be, but I didn't want to live the life that she was living. I didn't want to do what she was doing as far as the protocol that she was following. But she was doing stuff raw. It was raw. And I really started to dive in deep into this raw education. Like, what is raw food? What does it mean to be a raw foodie? Raw and living foods. Okay, this kind of makes sense. And then, so I believe it was August of 2016. And then it was February 2017. I was snowboarding and I was riding single that day. And I got on the lift with this other single skier. And we started to talk. It's a black diamond run, which a black diamond is like a more intense trail, in runs that you could take. You got to be, a bit more of an experienced rider to take these kinds of runs. And he starts asking me some questions about what I do and this sorts of thing. And I told him about my mom, told him I'm in the medical field and, what I'm seeing. And it's like kind of scaring me, like I don't want to live the way that, I don't want to end up the way that I'm seeing a lot of people end up. And I told him about my mom reversing her cancer. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I reversed my stage 4 colorectal cancer at the age of 42. And he's like, I've been a raw foodie ever since for 44 years. And I was just like, what? Because I'm ingesting all this information. And in a way, I was like, is this like an angel or like my future self talking to me? Because I want to be this guy. I want to be in my 80s skiing with good energy with my grandkids or my great grandkids. I love going skiing and snowboarding. It's so much fun. It's one of the most amazing, activities, outdoor activities that I like to do, river rafting, these sorts of things. I love this kind of stuff, but I want to be like this guy. And, so I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh. He's like, yeah, what do you, if you are what you eat, Nate, well, what do you want to be? And I was like, I want to be like you, bro, like vibrant and healthy. And he's like, well, eat vibrant, healthy foods. And I'm like, son of a, all right, I got to do this raw food thing. And, as a guy, I'm like, hey, how's the flagpole? And
Right.
He's like full mast. And I'm like, damn, like I know so many people who are my age. At the time, I was like just getting ready to turn 40 that year. I'm like, I know a lot of people with erectile dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And, that's lack of blood flow to our reproductive organ. That's the first sign of heart disease. We got clogging of the plumbing. And I worked in the cardiac unit. So we the operating room was right below our unit. We had patients come up directly after having, valve replacement or,
Mm,
triple bypass, all these different surgeries, stents, and these sorts of things. You got to see firsthand what you go through having this kind of a surgery.
mhm.
And it doesn't need to be that way. After reading the China study and, researching like Esselstyn and Campbell's research, I was like, wow, like we can reverse heart disease. This is fascinating stuff. Like the code is written within the food itself. We just have to eat it. And of course, like the best way to eat it is in its raw, natural state. Or if you're cooking it at lower temperatures, trying to stay away from, these higher temperatures. So this was the, shades of lenses I was starting to look through, and it just made perfect sense to me. I was like, I need to really figure this out. I need to go raw. Like raw makes sense. I
That's
don't want to
amazing.
be, with these sorts of things, being genetics within my family, heart disease, cancer. I used to make the joke, like if we swallow our own saliva, just like this, I just swallowed a little bit of saliva. Like we're going to get cancer because everybody's getting cancer. It was kind of like a joke, like, oh, like we're totally screwed. We're going to get cancer, like everybody's getting cancer. But it's like, well,
Yeah,
what is cancer? And then of course, yeah, just all these sorts of things that
yeah,
there's like an energy here in a lot of ways, I feel like, that doesn't have our best interest as humans at hand. And, what can we do to kind of, take the control back? So that night I went home and I researched all about raw food diets, and I was looking for a meal plan because I didn't know what to do. I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't want to do what my mom's doing. She's like on this extreme juicing protocol and she's like fasting a lot. And,
yeah,
it was just intense. It was no way of life that I wanted to live, not sustainable, didn't look delicious. She wasn't making delicious meals, right? She's fighting for her life.
yeah.
So then I found Lissa. I saw her before and after picture. She had a YouTube channel, Raw Food Romance, and I was like, this chick makes sense. She's speaking to me, like this resonates. This feels right. She's not like super far left, or far right or whatever it may be. She's not like super extreme. It felt more balanced.
Mm,
And she had a meal plan. She had a 30-day meal plan, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, different for every day. So essentially 90 recipes. I already was like falling in love with her because she was just so amazing. And of course, I was like, I'll support her. I'm going to buy her book. So I bought her book, went raw at the hospital. I'm working at the hospital. I had come to work with my backpack on, with my Vitamix with me and my cutting board and my bowl and spices. And man, I was dedicated and determined to make my raw dressing at work. I'm cutting my salad. I'm having banana ice cream and smoothies. I basically lived off of smoothies and salads, banana ice cream and raw, fresh fruit, and I did that I followed her meal plan for 7 months and lost nearly 70 pounds. And people were scared, family and friends were like, I'm worried about you, Nate. Like, are you taking drugs? Are you on meth? Like, you're losing a lot of weight. And it's only because they have been used to seeing me like
mhm.
inflamed and overweight, like my whole life. I've always been kind of like a huskier dude, So, and I felt so good. I was definitely like thin though. I started to lose more weight than I should have because, I wasn't like, I wasn't eating enough. Even though I followed her meal plan, I would stray from the meal plan from time to time. And there was some days where I probably wasn't eating enough for my age and my activity level. So that's a really important thing, is to eat enough. But essentially, like, I try to like boil that down into like a Reader's Digest version, but that's why I went raw.
Yeah, no, you know what? I have to first thank you so much for sharing all of that. There was a lot of good information. Your journey is a great teaching tool. And I'm so sorry that your mother struggled and went through all that. But wow, to know that she thrived eventually, and that's great. I just a few weeks ago lost my father to kidney failure, and
Mm,
so I understand, the kidneys are very important. And when they're not functioning properly, like everything else, eventually the body is not going to be thriving, and we're not going to
yeah.
be able to it's not going to be sustainable. So
Mhm.
I want to check the chat. We had some questions
Mm.
and some comments. So let me just go back here for a minute and let me just see for a second here. Okay. So earlier on, Bernadette had said almond meal and nutritional yeast make a good Parmesan substitute, which I think is
Mm.
good. We have
Yes.
Sherry likes fruit with some loves. I want to say hello to her.
Hey,
And
Sherry.
Mona. Yeah, and Mona's in the house. Hi, Mona. And
Mona.
let's see. Mona says, "Oh, I just love Jennifer's energy and excitement." Well, thank you. So Mona says, "I would never guessed him to be a nurse, but I can absolutely see it now." And Marilyn says, "We don't have to be perfect," which is good. Apple a day. Hey, glad you're here. And then let's see. I knew it. I bet he has been to Steamboat to ski, says Mona to you. And then Apple a Day says it's hard to hear about the suffering of animals. And
Mm.
so, really good, just nice conversation going on here. And then let's see. Oh, hi, Jill. Jill Caperton's in the house. Elsa's in the house. Course Scorpy. Are those orange wood guitars hanging behind you, Nate? Either way, they're super cool.
They're not orange wood, but I do have some lights, right? There's like some light tubes and it's kind of like shining some orange light against the wall back there. Yeah, so I know, kind of fun. Just
Yeah.
spice up the background a little bit. We got this cool Murphy bed. That's what this is here. Love that thing.
Oh,
So when we have guests come over, it's just like, boom, there's the bed.
yeah. And then we have Mona wants to know, was he a nurse in Colorado?
No, I was in Southern Oregon, Medford, Oregon. And we had it's still there, of course, obviously, a great heart center. People would come from all over the state and even some other states to our hospital. It was Asante was the hospital. And it was a great experience. I loved the job and the people that I worked with, and I loved my patients, and it was a great experience. It was a really great experience. I do wish I would have journaled a bit more through that,
Mm,
because there's a lot of stories. But really, what it was for me in a lot of ways was just that awakening. Like, we had a respiratory therapist who, I come to work one day. And of course, coming to work, sometimes you're like, I'm dropping my backpack and I'm doing chest compressions. Someone's coding out right there,
yeah.
so you're seeing it on a daily basis. It's just high energy, super fast paced. And, but it was interesting to see, that revolving door in a way of keeping people kind of coming back for more treatment, coming back for this, not necessarily a lot of education of how you could not come back. One of our that respiratory therapist, though, I come to work and he's in the hospital bed, and I was like, yo, what are you doing here, bro? And I look at his chart and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you're in for your 16th stent.
Oh,
And,
wow.
for those of you who may be listening in who don't know what a stent is, let's picture you've got a garden hose, right? And that's your plumbing, like your arteries in your body. And that hose has some sand in it, some mud. And that would be like the arterial plaque building up. So water, our blood, is not going to flow through the hose very well. So we go in, amazing stuff that we can do. We go in with a camera and a little balloon, and we blow up that balloon in that section of the piping of the hose that's clogged, to let the blood flow or the water go through the hose. Now, this can be reversed, which is fascinating stuff. Like, this should be front page news on the news, like the major news channels every single day. You can reverse heart disease if you just go to a whole foods plant-based diet. Get more plants into your life, cooked, raw, whatever, get them in. So that was really fascinating to see. And it's just interesting because he's like, no way, Nate, I love my sausage too much. And it just, to me, I was like, man, there's some people who just came here to party. Like, they don't care, like he did not care. And he's like, I got to make sure you guys are doing your job right. I want to see what kind of care I get on this end of the spectrum. And I was like, man, 16 of these suckers. Like, when are you going to, change your ways? But yeah, like I said, some people, they came here to party. This is it's an interesting experience living as a human being, and all these different choices that we have. And one of the surgeons, great surgeon, he would bring us 4 dozen donuts every Sunday because he worked on Sunday. He worked more than just the Sunday. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, are you trying to drum up more business? There's only 10 nurses in this unit, like what? 48 donuts? Like, we do not need this. So I'm like calling materials, like, calling like, like the just Gen Med, the different places in the hospital. And we had that tube system, kind of like the bank, the vacuum tube. You drive up and you get the tube and you put your stuff in and it vacuums back to the teller. We had that in the hospital. I think a lot of hospitals have that kind of thing. So I'm like literally putting donuts in biohazard bags because, they're sterile bags, and I'm like wrapping them up and like sending donuts to different, units in the hospital. Of course, I made a lot of friends that like, we don't need 4 dozen donuts here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you have a question? I might've got sidetracked there.
No, that's really, I mean, it's sad because the food is hurting people, but that is really funny that you were doing that. No, I just want to, Core Scorpy said, Orangewood is the name of a company which makes guitars, but yeah, I love it. So I just wanted to share that. And
Gotcha.
Anyone else that came in here, I want to say hello. What is really a testament to here is that when you realized your why, I call it the emotional connection to something that you wanted to do. It didn't matter. You were going to do it, right? So you made up your mind. I'm going to research about Raw. These are the reasons why. And you took a backpack. You took your supplies. It didn't matter what anyone else was doing. It wasn't about being accepted by your peers or standing out, right?
People thought I was crazy.
I love hearing that. I love hearing
people thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm having my smoothie in the morning and people are like, that's a lot of sugar. And I'm like, dude, you're drinking a freaking Starbucks coffee with a scone that's frosted. Like, what are you talking about? Sugar? This is natural sugar, bro. Like, this is fruit. The body recognizes that sugar. I don't know about that sugar. And of course, I was a barista for years too at a really great company, Dutch Bros. I love, the company, the family. But I wasn't vegan at this time, but I started to realize, I'm like, man, I'm like selling drugs. Like, this is a drug. I'm packing people full of fat and sugar and this caffeine, like on a daily basis. People are, we got our regulars, like, and coffee is like one of the I think it's like the second thing traded next to oil. Like, it's a very, very, huge commodity in our day and age. And we're struggling for energy as people. Like, we're not sleeping enough. We're not hydrated. We're on a nutrient deficient diet. Most people, one smoothie could be more vegetables and fruit than someone gets in an entire month. Some of these people in the world, so I know it's fascinating when you have that why, when you have that X factor. I call it the X factor.
Yeah.
Your why. I like your emotion. What'd you say? Your emotional connection?
Emotional connection. For me, that's what I call it, because when I was hearing about your why, I did not understand what that was. I kept saying, my why, because I would hear, you need to find the why that makes you cry. I would hear that. And I thought, I don't get it. I just didn't understand. But when I finally dug really, really deep through a homework, actually, and realized it's digging in deeper and asking yourself these questions, right? Why do I want to help people? Well, because I want people to feel better. Why do you want people to feel better? Well, because, I want them to live longer. And I had to keep going, why and why and why. And eventually I turned it around to, it was really about me. It's not about them. I mean, and so I thought, wow, when I finally realized it had to do with me, with my journey, with the fact that I was bedridden for 14 months and I got my life back because of fruits and vegetables, I realized it's about quality of life. And so I thought, that is an emotional connection within myself. And
Mhm.
that emotional connection can also mean your why. But I didn't
Yeah.
understand it that way. And once I dug deep enough, I can get goosebumps. I can cry about it. I can
Mm.
really, because it's my true
Yeah.
emotional connection. And
That's your story. Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
it's so sad that we as people have to have something that happens to us detrimental to our health a lot of times for us to actually make that emotional and mental connection. Isn't
yeah,
it? Isn't it fascinating? Because it's like if that didn't happen,
yeah,
what would you have done, right? You're
right.
at wit's end. Yeah.
Right. And you know what? It's really interesting because I mean, my own journey and my own ups and downs and things that I've tried, I still didn't get it because I tried vegan and I tried whole foods, but wasn't doing it the way that I should have been doing it
Mm,
because I didn't know any better. But I had all kinds of tumors and growths, and I had
mm,
chronic fungal sinusitis where I'm allergic to an air particle that we breathe, and
mm.
it's causing so much inflammation. It's causing me to get sick every 30 days when I had my cycle, and it was just a disaster. And then they found a tumor in my pituitary gland. I had brain surgery. It's like, and I thought I was doing everything right. And you know what?
Yeah.
I wasn't, but there was a time when I finally figured it out, and I didn't do it by figuring it out. I accidentally stumbled upon it because I was having a blood test in 3 weeks, and I knew my cholesterol was up. And I knew that if I did Dr. Esselstyn's prevent and reverse heart disease way of eating, that I could bring it down. And I didn't tell my family. And I just
Ooh,
started eating that way the best that I could, had the blood test, 50 points drop in three
wow.
weeks. And you know what happened? I
Wow.
was stunned and shocked that I
Yeah.
could get up, that I could move my hips, that I was
Mm,
starting to have my mobility back. I could squeeze my hands. I could hold a pen. I couldn't even hold a spoon to feed myself.
dang.
And so I just thought, oh my gosh, what is happening here? And I
Yeah.
just started, keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing. We don't have to know everything. Just keep
Yeah.
going. And I kept going and going. And, it's a longer story, but ultimately, I got my life back. And then I
That's
was like,
massive.
I have to reach people. I have to reach that
Yeah.
person that's in that bedroom where I was saying, I don't want to be in this body anymore. I didn't want to live anymore,
Yeah.
not because I was suicidal, but because I had sensations that were constant. And I
Mm,
just thought, I got to reach those. Somebody is somewhere where I was and they don't
yeah.
know. So just
That's right.
being given the knowledge, having the awareness, then it's up to them. But so that's,
Yeah.
that's how I move through life now. And I kind of
Yeah.
went off on a tangent when you asked about my
No
why
way.
and my emotional
Tangent.
connection.
Come on, look at who you're talking to. Tangent. Jeez. No, that's amazing. So that what a blessing in a lot of ways too, right? Because you were able to turn it around and now you can share, with other people who don't know because we don't know. Like we're not taught this kind of stuff necessarily. It's not necessarily a prevalent part of our upbringing and education. Of course, it's changing now because we have these sorts of amazing platforms and we can connect all across the world and share stories, which sometimes can lead us down a different path that we don't necessarily, that isn't going to be as beneficial because, stories are really compelling and, some people are very, very confident and very, convincing. But yeah, how fascinating though that the plants, right?
The
Like the
plants,
plants.
the plants like
Yeah.
saved me. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's
and
this there's this really interesting, go ahead.
no, go
What was
ahead.
that? Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna
go
say,
ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if you've heard of the simulation theory, like we're living in a simulation. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have, but tell me more.
Okay. So it's a fun concept, and I like to entertain different concepts. So it's this concept that this is a design. And, of course, I'm not saying that this is, truly what I believe 100%, this is the way that everybody should think or whatever, because some people really get frustrated with these concepts. But two parts, I'll go through the simulation and then I'll go through like God's creation. So the simulation is really fascinating concept that we're living in like an elaborate computer simulation. And of course, like, we could go super, super deep in these, in this direction in itself. But the idea of that is pretty fascinating because everything is a part of a design. Like, it had to be designed. How you would design a web page, there's the code. Or like a computer game, for the creators to create the computer game, they have to write the code. So
Mhm.
how interesting that the code would be written within the program. If this is a simulated reality, the code is written within the program, that the plants would have these sorts of effects on our body within this program. That's one concept.
Wow, I hadn't
Then
heard that. I hadn't heard it
okay.
like that, so I'm glad you just taught me.
Yeah, there's this guy, Tom Campbell, and he has a book called My Big Toe, and it's my big theory of everything. And I think what really caught the simulation theory, traction, is Elon Musk had said, like, I don't know what percentage, but it was some, like, it's I can't remember how he said it too, but the odds that we're living in base reality are, very, very slim. Like, the odds are this is a computer simulated reality, and we're all dreaming right now. And I love these concepts because when you get into the law of attraction and manifestation, and how the brain doesn't know whether it's imagined, you're imagining something or if it's real. Some studies, like, they show someone playing the piano, and they see what brain synapses are firing, and then they have them close their eyes and imagine that they're playing the piano. The same synapses fire in the brain. And then, of course, is the idea of quantum physics. Like, stuff is only there because we're actually paying attention to it. The double slit experiment is a really great analogy of that. So the idea that this is a simulated reality is pretty fascinating. I do believe that this is a very divine design in a lot of ways, because I've had experiences within myself that show me that we have nothing to fear. We're completely loved. And it's,
Mhm.
I do believe in a creator. I've always felt God or some sort of another, force with me since I was a child. God is always with me. And I always was really, disgusted that we're killing each other over whose God is like the God. Like, no, it's not this religion. Our religion is the religion that is the true religion. All of that is like separation. That to me is kind of like the work of the dark side, the devil, and keeping us separated. And there's a lot of dark, this is, called Satan's playground, and there's a lot of things that just are back assward here that don't make sense. And it would make sense that this is kind of like run by darker forces in a lot of ways. But we do have this spark within us to, heal ourselves and help heal other people through our energy and what we're taking in. Right. So that's what's so fascinating about the plants. We see the studies, and we're seeing more and more studies because we have different equipment nowadays. Like, we can test the bacteria within our stool, within our poo, to see what kind of, microbes that we are flourishing with. Do we have like putrefactive microbes that are breaking down dead matter and animal, flesh, and these sorts of things, which are helping us, right? And then, or do we have more fiber thriving microbes? We are able to study these things nowadays, which is fascinating. And it's so simple. Like, we love to complicate things as humans, but it is so simple to eat from the trees, the bushes, and the vines. It's said in the, like, I love the saying in the Bible, this is your food. Every, seed bearing fruit plant, or however the saying goes, it's said in several ways, but that's our food. And it's beautiful to see, like, what happens to us when we're led to a certain area. Like, you had this traumatic experience that you went through. You started to ingest the information. You started to compute it a different way, and you started to put that knowledge that you gained into practice. You
Mhm.
saw your body heal. You felt better. You're able to move again. You gained wisdom through that. Now you're sharing that wisdom, and it continues. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
We have a lot of work to do, though, because there's a lot of people who are, I mean,
Oh,
I'm in this camp. I have these lenses on. So the lenses that I wear, I don't, prescribe to the main narrative that, we need, like, this carnivore thing is just this, it's just sweeping the world, and if I love how Michael Greger says, we love to hear good news about our
Yes.
bad habits, right? And I
Yes.
love that. It's like, well, this is, people are like, oh, just eat sticks of butter. We follow these carnivore pages too to see what's happening. And it's so
Right.
sad to see people are having strokes and heart attacks. And, the people in the comments are like, it's cool, just keep going. And we see the same kind of thing in the opposite end, the extreme kind of detox community too. People are really like hurting their bodies, but that's all a part of the journey. That's all a part of the experience. We got
Yeah.
to go through
Yeah.
these things to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a question here. I just want to, that Elle said, has anyone asked what to do about being cold while doing raw? So it's nice to hear that people are talking about raw. What would you say to
Mm.
her?
Oh, that's a great question. And it sucks to be cold. So when you want to be warm, so you could do a few things. Like a lot of times when someone is, eating a raw diet, raw food itself isn't really like dense in calories. It's got a lot of nutrients, and that's a good thing, but there's not a lot of calories in the food. So you have to eat more of the food, more raw food. And sometimes our internal warming mechanisms aren't necessarily fired up if we're in like a low calorie deficit. So it's good to track what you're eating. I think everybody should be doing this using like an app like Chronometer and typing in what exactly you're eating throughout the day, what supplements you might be taking for that day, and you can really see your numbers. And you can alter like your sex and your weight, and these sorts of things to really dial in like where you should be. Because at rest we have our BMR, our Lissa likes to call it, and I like this too, the bare minimum requirement. It's called the basal,
I
the
like
base.
that.
It's the basal metabolic rate. And that's like how many calories it takes just to run this machine at rest, laying in bed, breathing and all the organs functioning. And if we're under our BMR, then we might be a little cold, like a little less oxygen and blood is going to our hands and extremities and these sorts of things, like our feet, our nose, our ears, these sorts of things. So calories could be a really big thing to help stay warm, increasing the calories. And then another thing, of course, would be to, maybe add some, some people don't prescribe to this, because, like I said, I go down all these different rabbit holes, and I know some people are really against like spices and peppers and these sorts of things. But, these kinds of things can be really helpful too, like, cayenne pepper, and different hot spices and stuff to kind of help warm you up as well. And our blenders like Vitamix or Blendtec, like a really high quality, high speed blender, can actually warm up the mixture. If you're making a soup or something like that, it can actually warm it up to where you could actually get it to where it's hotter than the raw temperature. Like there's, these temperatures, we study these things with our tools. When do we actually start to see different things happening within the structure of the molecule at certain temperatures? That's why 115 or 118 is, considered still raw, but things that, you can actually get your meal or your soup or sauce or whatever hotter than 120 degrees in the Vitamix in a blender, just because it's spinning so fast. And I do this with my infrared thermometer. I'm like, wow, that's like, okay, cool. It's still raw, So that's something you can do. Heat up, your soups and have more warm meals that way. Other things that you could do would be to, of course, exercise. Exercising is really great. Like jump on a rebounder, a little trampoline, lift some weights, get down, do some body weight stuff, maybe some push-ups. These sorts of things can be really good to kind of increase the blood flow within our body. And, I'm not against anything necessarily. Like, everybody's on their own evolutionary journey, but tea might be really nice too. Maybe some warm water with some ginger, some lemon to kind of warm you up. When I was hiking the Colorado Trail with my son, it's a 500-mile trail through the state of Colorado. I was freezing cold, and I was doing this all raw, and I had cold soaks. I didn't have a stove. Cold soaks is a meal that you just would take like a container with a, watertight lid, pour your meal in there with some water, soak it, and then you eat that after it's absorbed the water. It's a great way to eat meals on the trail without having to, use a stove. But there was a guy on the stove. It was raining, and then it started to hail, and it was snowing that night, and I was so cold. And he
Mm.
had tea, and his thing was tea. He was like the tea guru. He had a cute little teapot with him, and we were at camp with, several of the people that we met on the trail. We all kind of grouped together at this one camp. We got a big fire. We're like drying our socks out and stuff. And he was making sure that our teacups were not empty. And
Oh,
from that point, that really changed the gear within my head. I was like, I need to carry a stove with me no matter where we are, because if I need to boil some water, like, how am I going to do that if I don't have a stove? And God bless him, because that tea really helped warm me up. Like, having some warm tea go in, I'm holding my cup and it's warming up my hands.
yes.
So that can really help too. But eating enough is really important. Then another thing too is, say, like, we can always take note of how the grocery store is presenting the food. Certain foods don't need to be refrigerated. Of course, if you're going to have a salad, you could, it's cold lettuce. You could take that lettuce out. You could put it on the counter, a couple hours before you're going to make your salad. It's not going to be as cold. Cucumbers don't necessarily need to live in the fridge. You can take your bell peppers out. Tomatoes don't have to live in the fridge. So we can take things out to have it more room temperature. And that's another, kind of reason why people say like raw is the best, because that's, we in nature, we are living in these warmer culture, climates, and we have these fruits that are growing in the sunshine and these sorts of things. But not all of us can, live in the tropics, right? And so,
Right.
but those are some tricks that have helped us. Lissa, of course, was is a great testament to this, because she was raw. Same with Chris Kendall. They live in Canada, which Canada is like, oh my gosh, that's like 9 months of winter up there. And they were able to stay raw. And I'm just regurgitating what they've said, because I haven't necessarily lived in a cold climate like that. But for me personally, I'm not here to try to like persuade anybody or convince anybody that they need to go 100% raw. I don't necessarily feel that it's really like sustainable for families and a lot of people. I honestly do feel that having some warm foods in their life can be beneficial in a lot of ways. I don't come from that camp that we need to like not have cooked foods. Like, I went raw because it made sense to me, and I was like, I feel the best, but I still love steamed broccoli. And if you want, like, Lissa made a raw soup the other night, and I just wasn't digging it. I was like, babe, this is tasty, good broth, but I'm just not really vibing. It's raw kale. She massaged the kale, but it was so fibrous. I was like, I started to kind of, I'm struggling within my own mind too, because I'm like, ooh, like, I don't want to stay in this label of like 100% raw foodie. And I've never said I'm 100% raw, because we eat cashews and maple syrup and smoked paprika and these sorts of things. But I was like, man, if this was if I just put this in the Instapot for a little bit, it'd soften up that kale. I could eat like 3-4 bowls of this soup, and I would
Mm.
be getting more calories. And why am I trying to like stay in this box? Like, I don't want to, because Lissa's like 100%. Like, I mean, although we do have, like I said, maple syrup, coconut aminos, nutritional yeast, cashews, all these things aren't raw. Even raw cashews aren't technically raw. And But for me, I I'm kind of coming back around to like, and the Colorado Trail kind of did this for me. I was like, you know what? Like, what's wrong with a steamed sweet potato once in a while? I haven't had a sweet steamed potato, and of course I'd want to make like a good hemp or cashew creamy sauce to put on that potato, because a potato really is like, Lissa will say like it's a vehicle for oil and salt, and I'm like, oh, that's a great
Oh,
analogy. Like, yeah, who's going to eat just a potato by itself? Like, you're going to want some sort of seasoning on there or sauce, right? So, but I don't necessarily ever want to come across as, trying to convince someone that they shouldn't be eating some warm foods. So, I don't know. That's where my mindset is. I love, like I said, steamed broccoli. I love steamed carrots. I can't eat as much broccoli or cauliflower raw as I can steamed, and it's really enjoyable. Like, I love steamed beets. They're so good. And I love our raw food. I mean, the raw food I feel amazing on. But those would be things that I would do. Yeah.
I love that. Those are great tips. We also have, of course, Scorpy saying blankets and jackets, LOL. Of
There we
course,
go. There we go. I
right?
mean, yeah, like totally. That should have been the first thing I said. Well, bundle up. Like, are you wearing a t-shirt? It's cold. Yeah, blankets, electric blanket. Oh man, that definitely will
Yeah,
help.
yeah. I love that. I love that you shared so many tips and so many tricks, and you shared so much about your story and journey that is so helpful, inspiring. Really, really shared and taught me. I know we had. Do we have any other questions in the chat? I'm just going to see. No, I think we answered them all. Lots of chatting going on amongst people, and
Good. That's good.
yeah,
They're
that's
hanging
really
out. They're
great.
having fun.
Yeah, so the bundle, this is the last day of the bundle, and if you haven't gotten it, go ahead and get it. It's $49, and tomorrow you won't be going, darn it, I wished I'd gotten it, because it'll be over. So
Yeah,
um
get that bundle. And there's a collaboration ebook in the bundle too, which there's certain creators that, put recipes into the collaboration ebook, and that's exclusive to this bundle. And of course, yeah, these bundles are amazing because it gives us as people the tools to start to ingest more of these amazing dishes into our life, because someone, coming from someone who is like, a meat and potatoes kind of guy, there's always like, oh, I'm a meat and potatoes guy, or my husband doesn't eat, he's a meat and potatoes guy. Some people just don't know what to do. They don't know what to shop for. They don't know what to buy. They don't know how to make these recipes because we haven't really been brought up in this sort of, some people are fortunate enough to where they're brought up in these households, a whole food, plant-based household. They know what to do. But, for the average individual, it's eggs and hash browns, or, oatmeal is like dreaded. Like now oatmeal to me is like, oh, that's such a treat, because I don't have oatmeal very often, and I'll do some cold soak overnight oats or whatnot. But these bundles are amazing because it gives us the tools. And I like the saying, like, we're only as good as our tools, so when you
I
have
like
these
that
sorts of
too.
tools, you know what to do. You could be a complete noob and you could read the recipe and you could follow the instructions that you're finding in these books, and you're going to end up with pretty close to the exact same outcome of what the creator put these recipes together for, which is just
Yes.
powerful. You can come out within, I mean, if anybody was to, say if they're eating a standard style diet, the standard American diet is called, which, like I said, I've said before, like most of the world is, kind of standard. I think it's like the standard domesticated diet, because so many people are eating so many processed foods and these sorts of things. But if somebody was just to eat whole food, plant-based, high raw, I always encourage high raw. There's some people do the percentages, and I do kind of like, I tell my friends, like, hey, if you were to eat like 70% raw foods, like you're technically like a raw foodie, 25% whole food, plant-based, low to no oil, like no salt. And then, you've got 5% to kind of, goof around, and, maybe you have pizza with your friends on, Saturday night this month or whatever. Of course there's the pleasure trap and these sorts of things, can slippery slope, but this bundle
Right.
is amazing. Yeah, definitely. You
Yeah.
guys, if you haven't got the bundle, grab it, because I've heard a lot of people, contributors within the bundle too, and different doctors, and we always, we put doctors, on this pedestal because they've gone through a lot of schooling and training, and they're very disciplined and dedicated. I've heard them say that they really wish that they would have had something like this when they first started into, eating more plants,
Yeah.
because there's so many delicious recipes.
Yeah, and I've said this before, it is its own community, because you can
Yeah.
reach out. I mean, anyone can reach out to me. I'm part of the bundle. You can reach out to people if you have questions, or you can feel confident and safe. Okay, I know that this bundle doesn't have oil in it, or, and so
Yeah.
you can make sure that it's, if that's what you're trying not to ingest, okay, you can rest assured that that's going to help you. And there's so much raw stuff in there as well. I do have somebody
Yeah.
that asked a question. Core Scorpy, I never thought about maple syrup being cooked
Hmm.
or not raw. Whoops, hold on. Where did or not raw? Very interesting. Honey is raw. Is that superior to maple syrup in terms of health benefits?
Yeah, no, there's actually more health benefits to maple syrup from the research that I've done than honey. Honey is delicious, and honey, of course, is an amazing tool to use, like for cuts and infections and these sorts of things. It does spike the blood sugar more so than maple syrup. And the reason that maple syrup isn't raw is it has to be pasteurized, for the shipping process. And it would go rancid a lot faster than if it wasn't, if it was raw. So yeah, it's actually heated to temperatures that are above the raw temperature of 118 degrees. And that's, to help it be more shelf stable. Of course, maple syrup isn't going to be as shelf stable as honey. Honey can last for, thousands of years. And it's kind of interesting with honey because honey is the bee's vomit, which is really fascinating when you learn about, what honey is. And as a vegan, we don't eat honey because that's taking something from another species that isn't necessarily meant for us. That's the food for them. So that's why as a raw foodie, we don't eat honey. Although honey it's a tricky one to kind of get away from because honey's used in a lot of things. I know, and there's all these different kind of rabbit holes to run down. But yeah, I know maple syrup is very, very nutritious in a lot of ways. And we use maple syrup every single day. I always throw a splash in our smoothie, along with a date. Some people, really, don't go that route, but I don't really have a problem with it. I like it. We don't have it every single morning, but then of course on our salad, sometimes we'll do a simple salad of maple syrup and tahini with some lemon juice and some seasonings, because on the tongue, we have all these receptors. And if you can hit all those flavor receptors, something sweet, something sour,
Yes.
some like a little fatty, some herbs, maybe the aromatics like the onion, the garlic, like you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So that's a quick, easy dressing to use. But yeah,
Yeah.
maple
Better
syrup.
than the combination of the Dorito, right?
Yeah, or these other dressings that are just
Yeah,
like loaded with oil.
right.
And there's salt, there's so much salt in everything. We start putting these lenses on and you start looking around like, whoa. Like we go to Chipotle, we've gone to Chipotle several times, Lisa and I, and we'll get a salad. We get the taco lettuce because it's shredded a little finer. I don't like huge chunks of lettuce, I like it shredded a little bit finer. And we get the pico de gallo, we'll get the corn salsa, which isn't technically raw, because there's like, some roasted peppers in there, and the corn most likely isn't raw. It's, probably canned, been pasteurized, and then some guacamole. But it's like lettuce, salsa, and guacamole. And there's like over 2,000 milligrams worth of sodium worth of salt in that fresh salad. And that was like an epiphany for me. I'm like, man, like we are like, there's no way to win. Like we're of course they're doing this to help the food last longer, but of course like
Oh,
to addict us too, right? People are like, you get that salt. There's someone who doesn't eat salt, like we add like very, very minuscule amounts of salt to certain recipes, but we do use miso. And
oh
that's a
yeah.
fermented product. It's like salty because sodium's important. But just with raw fruits and vegetables, if you're eating the appropriate amount of calories from raw fruits and vegetables, you'll get 500 milligrams of sodium within the fruits and vegetables. And then, if you add a little miso or some fermented food into your diet, you could be up there around 1,100 to maybe 1,500 milligrams of sodium. But the average American is getting over 4,000 milligrams of sodium per day. And this is, and this goes into, we get the hypertension and we got all these issues that, that come with that. And it's so sad to see, but that's another thing that's so cool about this bundle is there's no salt in anything. I mean, if anything, there's going to be some fermented foods, maybe you make some fermented pickles, but I know there's like, Chef Yin has her kimchi recipe in there. Lisa has a fermented a sauerkraut recipe in her burger book. These sorts of foods are, it's because it's important to have, salt, and especially certain people with lower blood pressure. Like it's good for them to have, the appropriate amount of sodium in there. But I know I love these bundles, man, because
They're
like you don't
great.
have to think. It's kind of like if you're vegan and you go to a vegan restaurant, you're like, oh, this is so awesome. Like everything is vegan. You just don't even know. Like, like I can order anything. I don't have to worry. Like everything is vegan. Like, oh, what a relief that is. And that's what's so cool about this bundle is, everything is SOS free, salt, oil, and sugar free. You know, everything is natural ingredients. We've done our best going through everything to make sure that there's no oil in anybody's recipes, you know, and if they did have oil, we're like, can you please change this recipe? Like, this is an oil-free bundle.
Yeah,
So you can rest
I
assured
love
that
it.
everything is going to be on the up and up and healthy in here.
Yes, thank you so much. And Anne was asking where to get the link. It is across the bottom of the screen. It's not a clickable link right there. You can copy paste it, or afterwards it will be in the show notes on YouTube. And it's also in my bio everywhere. And Nate has it in his bio on his platforms. And so you can always reach out if you still are having trouble, and we will make sure to get it to you. Somebody also is asking, do you use miso, says Karen. Do you use
Yeah.
miso?
Yeah, we use miso quite often. A lot of our dressing recipes will have miso. A lot of our, you know, dehydrated recipes, like if we're making some burger patties or we're making, I mean, miso is just, it's an amazing food, and it's a living food in our eyes. Things that are fermented are actually living food. I say that in our eyes because I'm kind of like, you know, in between different camps. There's like, it's just interesting, the different camps that
Yes,
people can
I
prescribe
agree
to.
with you. Yeah, I agree with you,
Yeah.
because when it depends, like we evolve in our journey. And so when
Yeah.
I first started, I was really focused on this certain way, which, and then I learned, okay, I'm kind of changing the way I eat a little bit to match where I am now. And now it's more important for me to, have something that maybe I wasn't having over here that's still a whole food. And so we kind of have to give ourselves grace and allow ourselves to evolve and just
Yeah.
recheck and see where we're at and what we need. And like you said, I loved how you said you don't want to stick yourself in a box. We don't need to do that. I know we like to strive and do the best we can because we want those results for people that are wanting to change.
Yeah.
But there's room to ebb and flow, I want to say.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
so yeah. So is there anything else that you want to bring up, ask me, or talk about that we haven't yet?
You know, well, you did touch upon your story. And of course, like in the beginning, I was like, all right, I'm going to interview you and find out about your story and, you know, what inspired you to write this book. And I love how you put this book together because you did share a little bit about your story in there and, you know, these recipes. And that's a really powerful story. Um, you know, um, Gosh, I mean, we'd need another hour because
Yeah.
I'd love to go I'd love to go in deeper for sure, but yeah, I think that you pretty much kind of touched upon, you know, what clicked within you, your mental connection, your
Yeah.
emotional and mental connection, what really kind of inspired you to change your ways. And of course, you know, it's great that you're doing what you're doing and putting yourself out there and delivering this message to other people because there's so many people that just really have no clue. They and it's not their fault or anything. It's not like they're ignorant. But of course, a lot of us do have those blinders up. But if we resonate with somebody like yourself, I love your energy and you know what you're bringing to the table, and you know, I love that you're not only planting the seeds but watering the seeds out there, you
Oh,
know, to help
I
people
appreciate that.
because yeah, I really feel that
That's,
we all have this like
yeah,
point system within us, you know, and eventually people will make that shift. And hopefully more people could make the shift before something happens to them,
right.
right? Before they have some sort of medical intervention, you know, we can do that. Cause, you know, for me, myself, I was like, I'm doing this for preventative reasons. I don't want to get something. I'd like to do whatever I can, you know, no one gets out alive, right? Like we're all going to die. So like, what can I do to live the best that I can and have
Yeah.
as much fun as I can? And if people could only feel like what a whole foods plant-based diet can actually do for them. And, you know, this is where it's tricky because the carnivore side is like, oh, I feel so amazing. And I think both sides of the camps, we remove the processed food and we feel a lot better. But,
Yeah.
you know, gosh, we can't deny the fact that, you know, eating carnivore isn't reversing heart disease, atherosclerosis, and, you know, like diabetes and these sorts of
And yeah,
horrible things.
inflammation and stroke and
Ah,
arthritis and autoimmune. I mean, the list goes on. Yes,
on.
definitely.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for, just inspiring me. You inspire me to do a better job and to keep going. And I would love to stay connected. If you ever, outside of the bundle, wanted to connect, I'd be happy to be interviewed, or, just do something else in the future, because this
Yeah.
was great. I had a really good time.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, we'll definitely stay connected. Like I said, I'd like to pick your guys' brains too on a few different
Yeah,
things. So we'll stay
sure,
connected for sure. And my
sure.
my goal is this year to put together, like we do have a podcast, and we rarely. It's been years since we put anything on the podcast, but I'm like, man, I really need to like get back into podcasts, because this long form that we do, like this conversation here, whether, because somebody could be listening to this on their headphones, going to grocery shopping and doing errands. They don't need to see us. It's not like we're doing anything super fantastic on screen. So, but yeah, we definitely have to do more. And I would love to
Yeah.
hear like more in depth your story and your upbringing. So we'll do another one. I'll connect with you on Insta. And I'm so glad to have met you, and that you put such a great book into the Give Plants a Chance into the bundle. That really caught my eye. I thought that was a really clever name. And that is so true. People just need to
Yeah.
give plants a chance, Yeah,
Yes,
so
thank
good.
you so much. And I'm going to take one more question here. It's from
Yeah.
Olga. Nate, which ebook has wrap made from zucchini instead of onion? Before
Mm,
we head out,
okay.
do you know?
I am not quite, I have to look at Tales from the Tailgate, but in this bundle, we have a book called Tales from the Tailgate, and that's our How We Travel as Raw Vegans ebook. And we have 4 wrap recipes in there. And there might be, I'm not positive, if there is a onion-free recipe in there, if that's what you're asking, or onion free, or you're saying zucchini instead of onion. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
made from.
you go into the Tales from the Tailgate ebook and check it out. If you got the bundle, go in there, check that out to see, because I believe so. If not, we have another book Lissa has. It's called Hand Salads, and there's 34 different wrap recipes, and there are a few in there that are onion free. Mm-hmm.
And the hand salads is not in this bundle, but the
No.
Tales from the Tailgate is. And yes, so this is great. Hopefully that'll help you. If you have trouble still, you can reach out to either one of us, and we can try to help you get your question answered and your
Yeah,
recipe found. I just want
that's
to
right.
say,
Yeah, reach out, reach out. Like, we love
yeah, reach
hearing from
out.
people. It's all about making these connections. Yeah, what were we gonna say?
Oh, no, yeah, definitely. We want everybody to reach out. We're here for you however we can be. We both are. And I always like to say, don't forget to eat your greens and give plants a chance. And
I
I
love
want to
it.
go out. This is the last day. So I think we should
Woo.
go out with a little bit of party dance. And I want to thank everyone. And so here
Yeah,
we go. Let's get our party on.
yeah.
Come
Oh
on,
man.
it's the last day of the bundle. Don't be the one that doesn't get it.
I love it. I love it. Let me see. Maybe I
So,
can I do some lights here? I don't know.
yeah,
I'll have to
let's
find.
see. I'll put mine back on.
Oh, those lights are great. Those lights are
Oh,
great.
that was fun.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, this is the last day, man. This
This
is
is
this is
it.
it.
This is it. So for the bundle, and my gosh, it was just incredible to be a part of this. And I appreciate and thank everyone who is, been listening and following us, and people in the chat. Look at that. He's got the lights on. We got to get our lights back on and do
Yeah,
one
get the lights
more.
on. There we
One
go.
more. Here we go.
Woo!
Woo!
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did
party
it.
time, party time. Out with a bang, out with a bang. Get your bundle and eat your greens. All
Oh,
right.
so good. So good.
Thank you again,
Thank
Nate.
you.
This has been so fun. And everybody,
Absolutely.
we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us. Bye for
Bye.
now.